All right, joining us right now is someone who has dedicated nearly 3 decades to his craft. He has been a part of nearly every major wrestling promotion in North America, won too many championships to count, and has created numerous history-making moments. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the franchise, Shane Douglas. Shane, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thank you.
Now, Shane, on March 11th and 12th, you will be making appearances for ESS Promotions at ECPW, GCW, and the Wrestling Universe. For more information, everybody listening, head on over to ESSpromotions.com. We know you're a busy guy these days, so we thank you so much for joining us today. You were trained alongside Mick Foley by Dominic DeNucci. What were some of your initial thoughts about trying to make it as a pro wrestler?
Well, it's funny. I was just having this discussion the other day when I was over in England. With a bunch of the seminar students. Mick Foley and I, look, it sounds crazy today and almost like self-deprecating, but at the time, Mick and I both believed, like all the students at Dominic's school, that, we might be able to have a few wrestling shows locally in Pittsburgh, but we were nowhere near as good as those guys we were watching on TV. And none of us in the school, Mick or I or any of the students, had any inkling that we'd ever forge a career, let alone have a lengthy career and a noteworthy career. So, both of us, I talked to Mick about this a couple of years ago, we're both sort of a bit stymied by, that it happened, and obviously thrilled as hell that it did. We both wanted to make a career in wrestling, and we've both been able to do that. So, I feel very blessed. Somebody told me one time, if you love your job, you have to go to you never go to work a day in your life. And as much as the wrestling business can be tough, I've loved a vast portion of it and feel like I've never gone to work a day in my life.
You got your start in the UWF under Bill Watts. What are some of the biggest differences from when you started to what you see happening with wrestling today?
We could have a college course on this. The first thing I'll say is the kids today, first of all, are they've had the rug pulled out from under them because they have nobody overseeing to make sure that they learn their craft and master their craft, not just learn it, but master it. The second part is they are so amazingly athletic, the kids today. When I watch them in the ring, the effort that they put forth is astounding to me. I mean, they work their butts off as far as the effort they're putting in. And the moves and the types of moves that they do are so far beyond what, I was considered a flyer when I first started my career. Brian Pillman and guys like that were as well. Nothing that we did even comes close to what these kids are doing today. And so there's a wide gap in that. But on the negative side, there's back when I was breaking in, the old timers, the guys above me on the card would say, you got to learn to tell a story, kid. And what they were talking about was the psychology, and it didn't make sense at all to me at the time. I thought, what the hell are they talking about? Tell a story. I'm out here wrestling my butt off. And one day the light bulb went on, and I got it, as most people either do or don't in this business. And my guess is these kids today are probably a lot smarter than I was, my generation was, because of all this information they have. These kids today will get it too. And my question is, what an incredible product they'll put out wrestling-wise if they do get back to that old school feel of telling the story and the psychology. That's what the fans love. The fans, if you listen to, or if you saw the video of Roman Reigns in the blood packet, which, to me is like the apocalypse upon us. Mm-hmm. But when you watch that video and you listen to the fans are chanting, "This is awesome," because they think that finally they're getting something that throws back to what they used to watch. And in the PG-13 era, known as the WWE today. Unfortunately, when those fans now go back and watch that video, if they haven't already, they're going to feel cheated, slighted, and robbed. Mm-hmm. And that's not really what I think any customer base really wants to feel after doing business or partaking in doing business with somebody. So vast differences. But I'll leave you with this, what Bill Watts used to say. Bill Watts used to say, we're not splicing the atom, we're not curing cancer. Black hat, white hat, that's wrestling. Mm-hmm. And that may be an oversimplification, but if it is, it's not by much. The formula works. It's always worked. Why they've jettisoned the formula, you have to ask Vince McMahon. That I don't understand it. And I think that the kids today would pick it up very quickly and do like every generation has done, turn it into their own and make for one incredible wrestling product.
Definitely. Now, after the UFW, you went to work for NWA, working with Magnum TA. This was after Magnum had his car accident. What were you able to learn from arguably one of the most popular wrestlers of that time?
Oh, a ton. First of all, Magnum, Terry's just a great guy. And to see him going to work when most people, me included, would probably say, oh, this sucks and I'm just going to dwell on my depression. Terry came back, even at that point, and just had such a zeal for the business and for life that it was infectious. It was very easy to catch from him. And, since, I didn't realize it at the time, but since I've learned that at the time that happened, Terry had been in the business for less than 4 years. And when you put that into context, it took me 7 years before I really grasped, that felt comfortable going to the ring. Mick told me it was about the same for him. In fact, that seems to be at the standard. 6-7 years is like where you finally start back. Steve Austin said the same. But Terry was in for 4 years and had already been a star for several of those years. So if there's such a thing as a natural at something, Magnum TA was clearly the natural, and would have been, had he not had that accident, would have been the guy that dominated the world championships at that time.
Sure. Now, fast forward, you were very well known for your time in ECW. How did it feel when you started there and you were able to be more of yourself, if you will?
Well, it felt comfortable. It felt, like slipping into a comfortable pair of pants or sweatpants or something. It was the first time that I was allowed to push the parameters. Up to that point, the business had only seen Shane Douglas as a middle-of-the-card white meat babyface. In those days, you didn't have, most heels were pot-bellied, overlooking, nasty badasses. And, suddenly the business in ECW went in a completely different direction. And, what was black was now white, what was up was now down. And we had a chance, all of us, to push the envelope a little bit and to see where it went. A lot of the things in hindsight, ECW is become almost like a legend of lore. It was the greatest wrestling company ever. There were a lot of mistakes that were made there, and the key though was most people in ECW, Paul included, learned from those mistakes. And so each subsequent week that went on, the ECW product got better and better, and then it became almost a caricature of itself. The last few years that I was there, everybody, where Sabu was the first to, put somebody through a table. Suddenly everybody was going through tables. I was the first to get on the mic with the vulgarities, and all of a sudden everybody was on the mic with vulgarities. Everybody was swinging chairs. And so ECW became a caricature of itself, and it needed somebody to lord that in. The microphone should have been Shane Douglas's. The table should have been Sabu's. The chair should have been Balls's. Whatever the case. The cane was Sandman's. But in a company like Bill Watts, Bill Watts would have done that. Had somebody grabbed the microphone, but they weren't told to, they'd have caught hell in a fine in the back. Paul wasn't that kind of a leader. Paul led more by giving out the ideas and allowing his dressing room to do it, implement it how it wanted to. And most times that worked, and sometimes it didn't.
Speaking of ECW, have you seen an influx of fans talking to you about it since the inception of the WWE Network?
Sure. What's really amazing, Steve, I've noticed in the last couple of years, I'll get 8, 10, 12-year-olds coming to the merchandise table, and they want to get a picture and an autograph, and they come up and their eyes pop up and they'll say, "Oh, you're my favorite wrestler," and I laugh because I wasn't active on the national level, by the time they were even thought of. And it's because of the social medias, the YouTubes and the Apple TV and all the rest of this stuff, and this primarily the WWE Network, that people can now go back and watch that footage, and it's as fresh today as it was in 1993, 4 or 5. And it really is generating a new generation of fan. So yeah, there's a lot of that with the fans, not just the youngers, but you also get a lot of fans coming back and that may have been there or watched it initially, like say the Bell Throwdown, and they come up and they talk about it almost as if it happened yesterday or last week, and it was over 2 decades ago. Hard to believe, but
Sure.
yeah, it's had a big impact on the business.
Do you think a product like ECW could survive in the world of wrestling today?
Well, there's so many variables that go into it. I think anything that succeeds at the time it succeeds is a beneficiary of its time. ECW, when it came into being, you have to remember that the wrestling business, by proxy of WCW and WWF at that time, had gone to cartoon land, much like it has today. Mm-hmm. So the parallels are very striking between then and now. The difference was the wrestling business hadn't gone as deeply into the lows. Wrestling's always got highs and lows, like any industry does. But I don't think the business has seen this much loss or deep of a low as we're in right now. 15 years ago, there were somewhere between 48 and 52 million fans watching wrestling every week. And now we're down to, I think, 3.5 million, give or take. And that means a hell of a lot of fans have left the industry. And I think it's because of the lack of competition, the style that's being put out there. And so when ECW started, clearly, it was a reaction to what they were getting from WCW and WWF at that time.
Sure. Now, have you heard about any of the comparisons which people are placing ECW to NXT? How NXT now is pretty much what the fans want to watch than the main roster, if you will. Have you heard about that at all?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's I've watched it and I've seen. I don't watch it weekly or anything, but I've seen vast portions of it. They were very fortunate at the time that they made that move into the imagination of the fan base, that Dusty Rhodes was down there. And, Dusty, if Dusty knew nothing else, he knew how to build characters and storylines. And, he was doing that, and those kids down there with all the athleticism they had, it goes back to what I'd said earlier. You see now suddenly in that little microcosm called NXT, they've got a guy like Dusty Rhodes that understands how to do that and has that both feet planted in the old school. And those kids took to it like sharks to blood, and the product that they created. So, yeah, I think that NXT, although nothing similar to ECW in style, certainly has captured that imagination like ECW did in the 90s.
You've always been outspoken in the world of wrestling. What are some of the big issues you see in the business today?
The big one to me right now, and I think it's most timely because of as we're going into the WrestleMania season, you see all these injuries in wrestling. I asked Kevin Sullivan last week, how many matches he thought he had in his career. And he said he had, a couple of years before that, had, done a rough estimate. And he said he figured that he had over 30,000 matches in his career. And I asked him, I said, how many serious injuries did you have? I'm not talking about, a broken finger or stitches or, serious injuries, a ripped ligament, a broken bone, something that he physically couldn't wrestle. He said one. In the last match of his career, he was working with a kid that, made a mistake and did something to his neck. That's a pretty astounding figure, 30,000 times and no serious injury. And yet today you see, the WWE just decimated with serious injuries. Cena out, Orton out, Seth Rollins out. So those types of injuries, as a wrestlers, we're commodities to the company that we work for. And so if you're injured, just like in any professional sport, if you're injured and sitting on the sideline, you're not selling tickets, you're not exciting the fans and having an impact on the product and the bottom line. So to me, that's one thing. And I think that stems from the training. Today, any dog that can Harry can buy a ring and set it up and open a wrestling school. The question I would have is what would qualify somebody to be a wrestling coach or open a school? At the time that I started going, there were some of those. Fortunately, I met Dominic Panucci at a very young age, and Dominic had a pretty strong pedigree in the business. But there was also another school in Pittsburgh that was opened by a guy that had, worked, I guess, as an underneath guy in a few local independent shows. And suddenly he had a school full of kids learning to be wrestlers, supposedly. And if you don't know your crap, I'm not a mechanic by a long shot, but I could buy a garage and buy some tools and put a sign up, and you bring your car to me, doesn't know how to fix it properly. And I think that's a big, big thing in the business today.
We have a fan question from @Coach Soderling. He asks, it was said that you were to become the WCW champion before it closed. How is that going to play out? And did they already have any storylines in place for you? And do you know if when did those plans change to Booker T and Scott Steiner having the belt? I don't know if there's anything you can answer for him.
Well, there was always a lot of talk down there about, they were, WCW at the time that I was there really was in a mess. I mean, it was as we now look back and know, it was dying. The company had lost Time Warner or AOL, whichever it was at the time, had lost interest in it. But when I went there, I know that Bischoff was very high on doing stuff with the character. I know Vince Russo was very high on doing stuff with it. And I think right around that same time is when they decided to put the Revolution together and go with that. And I think that was to be like the stage that would set, for these 4 characters to start to dominate, and then the franchise character would ascend out of that.
Sure.
But I don't know as far as when that went off to the side, or if it ever did go off to the side, or was forgotten as opposed to just the company got sold.
Also, he wants to know, will you ever get a pro wrestling tee shop? His mother threw away his original ECW franchise shirt when he was moving, and he'd like another one. So,
well, it's funny because I get asked that question so often. I try to carry as many T-shirts on the road with me as I can, and it gets problematic just logistically. I do. I've been contacted several times by them, and I'm just so busy working on the new company that I just really haven't had time to sit down and contact the guy and do it. But if anybody out there wants a T-shirt, I know they can be gotten through my management at Shane Douglas Booking, no S at the end, Shane Douglas Booking at gmail.com. And we will try to get my webmaster is always complaining to me because he gets so many calls there, and it's just one of those things. So it's probably going to be the easiest route to go to pro wrestling tees, and I will be doing so at some point.
Lightning round.
What is something people would be surprised to know about you?
That I love politics.
Has your views on pro wrestling changed since becoming a father?
Well, my kids still have not seen ECW, so I think I've become more cognizant of product being age-related.
All right. Since you have been acting as of late, what is your favorite movie and actor or actress?
My favorite movie, currently I just watched the movie it's called Love and Mercy, about Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. And just, John Cusack, and I forget the other kid's name, Paul Dano, just play amazing roles. Play him 20 years apart. Both in all, my favorite actor is Bryan Cranston. I think, Breaking Bad, he was just astounding in, and Trumbo is great in. Actress, let me think here. There's so many great actresses out there right now, but I would say, the girl in Mad Max, Charlize Theron. She's just beautiful and really has the chops.
What do you hope to be remembered for in professional wrestling?
As somebody that tried to learn his craft and wanted to entertain people and tried to maintain the veracity of the sport of wrestling.
All right. Favorite person to ever wrestle?
Terry Funk.
Who's a person you just never felt chemistry with in the ring?
Sandman and I never had a real good chemistry.
Well, Shane Douglas, thank you so much. For all the fans listening, be sure and meet him and see him on March 11th and 12th at ECPW, GCW, and the Wrestling Universe. Once again, for more information, head on over to ESSpromotions.com. Shane Douglas, thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, man. I appreciate it.